Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the LAiV Harmony HP2A headphone amplifier and preamplifier. It is a $2,700 US piece that was sent to me directly from LAiV Audio. The folks over at LAiV Audio have been very friendly and fun to work with, but they have made no attempt to influence my opinion on this piece one way or another, so all thoughts that you are about to hear are mine and mine alone. I'm not aware of any retailers that sell this that I am an affiliate link partner with, so the link that you see down in the description where you can buy this product will just be there for your benefit, unless one of the affiliate partners that I have out there starts carrying this, in which case I will put affiliate links down there and label them as such. I only use affiliate link money to help keep the channel running. All right. This was also sent over with the Harmony DAC from the same company here, so expect a review of that coming up in the near future as well. But for today, we are going to talk about the HP2A amp, and I have some very good things to say about it. So let's get into that right on the other side of shameless self-promotion.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
There are some interesting features and aspects of the build to this product, so this review might get on the longer side, which is nothing new around these parts. So use the timestamps down below to jump around and find the parts that are of most interest to you. My basic takeaways on this unit are that it is a rock-solid piece of hi-fi gear, right? It sounds excellent. It is well built, it is well made, it has a robust and thoughtful feature set. There are a couple of aspects to the build and the operation that are a little bit unusual and a little bit quirky that I just have minor quibbles about. And really, that's all I can say about this piece here. Rock solid piece of hi-fi gear that I just have a few minor quibbles on that really are not deal breakers for me. So let's start unpacking all of that, starting with what this is and its features. All right, so it is a headphone amplifier and a preamplifier. The preamplifier stage is Class A buffered. The headphone amp section in it is Class AB. All right, it's not a huge unit, it's rather compact, but it's basically a chunk of aluminum or metal here that's got some cutouts in the chassis for the connections, the display, and then also the I/O panel on the back. But otherwise, it's basically one solid chunk here, and it is really solidly built there. So we'll do a unit tour in a little bit where we dive into that there as well. The specs on this, the maximum power output you can expect from the amplifier here is 11.8 watts per channel into a 32 ohm load with a 4 volt RMS input. Okay, LAiV's website is actually rather specific on how that power spec was measured, and I appreciate that. And so I'll put a link to that website so you can go and verify those numbers there. Okay, but that's a lot of output power on tap right there. So it kind of falls right in there with a trend that's going on in these headphone amps that are like $2,500 to $3,000 US, where there's just a huge power spec in there, and that fits right in. Okay, it's got both balanced and single-ended outputs that you can see here, but I really would recommend using the balanced outputs, only one at a time though, and not the single-ended, because the single-ended output is like 2.6 or 2.7, maybe 2.8 watts per channel, somewhere in there. And so it really is intended to be used as a balanced amp because its build is balanced, the part selection is balanced, and all of that. Do your best to use it balanced there. Okay. The output impedance of these balanced outputs here is rated at 0.7 ohms or 0.07 ohms, excuse me. That's what the website says, which is very, very low. And that's rather impressive, and that's good. I mean, we want that number to be low, generally speaking. So that's good to see there. And I will mention this again, but it can accept up to a 16 volt RMS input on its its balanced analog input, which is huge. Okay, more about that later. All right, those are the basic specs on it, and you get all of that for $2,700 US. So, I mean, where that puts it in the market is fairly interesting because that's like very close to the Hi-Fi Golden Wave Prelude, which is $2,500 US dollars, the Violectric HPA V281, which is $2,800 US dollars, and then we got like the Ferrum Ore and Hypsos, which that pair comes in at around 3,100-ish, I want to say, right in that range, and you've got the Hollow Bliss, which also is in this range. So it's getting to be a fairly crowded market point here of solid state amplifiers in like this $2,500 to $3,000-ish range, right around in there. And you're lucky because I have the Hi-Fi Golden Wave Prelude and the Violectric HPA V281 in-house and got to compare this direct AB against those two amplifiers, so I will report on those results later on in the review, and I'll give some thoughts on how it compares to the Ore in there, less on how I think it compares to the Bliss, because if you saw my Bliss review, you know that I didn't really like that amp very much, and so I'm not going to spend my time doing a comp there because I don't think it's worth to do that comp. Take this one. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and dive into the build of the unit. We'll take a unit tour, and then we'll come back on the other side. I will talk about the test gear and the sound and get into those comparisons and all of that good stuff. So let's get to it. All right, unit tour. Here is the front panel, and you can see that it sits on spiked feet and has a fair amount of clearance up off of a tabletop or a rack or something of that nature. So that is neither criticism nor complaint or compliment, just is what it is, and I have more to say about these feet here coming up in a moment. Look how awesome it looks. It is a great looking unit, okay, at least in my opinion. I mean, it looks really good. You do have the highly reflective display here. I mean, you can see me waving and like whatever is in the reflection back there, I don't know, okay, but it's there. All right, it's reflective here, but a big, easy to read display. It is a monochrome OLED display. Now, it is susceptible to burn-in. Okay, which basically just means you have a static number on there for too long, and so if you change that number, I don't know if this unit is burned in or not. Okay, if you change that number, you can kind of see, this one's not too bad. Okay, you can kind of see the outline of other digits in those numbers there. Also, occasionally, I think it's showing up on the camera, it flickers a little bit, at least just through the camera. It does not do that to the naked eye, okay? All right, but so, nice big display there. Then, again, this corner here is cut out. This is your power button. On, off right there. Push and hold for power, on, off, early standby, on, off. Whoop, I guess not push and hold. Oh, that just dimmed the display for me real quick there. Didn't shut the unit down, so it is push and hold, okay, for standby, on, off. This square right here, indicator, okay, matches the remote control. Okay, here's the remote control. Okay, it is a chunk of metal that they put buttons on, and then behind this screw panel right here is like a CR2032 battery in there. Not provided. You have to provide those yourself. Okay, basic functions, power, menu, okay, menu navigation, input selection, volume up, down, okay, mute, display options, okay. And then two function buttons that are programmable that you can do whatever you want with. But back to that square thing. See that square right there and that triangle right there? The way the LAiV stack came to me, the amp was set on square and the DAC was set on triangle, and they have identical remotes, and you can switch to controlling either one with this little slider switch right there. So on square, you're controlling amp. And then for me, triangle, you're controlling DAC. You can reverse that if you want in the menu, if you just really have to have square for the DAC for whatever reason. Okay, that's an option there. All right, then, okay, decibel volume indicator there. It, okay, goes, it's a 60-step as I understand it. So let's just go all the way to verify. I think it goes all the way up to 0. Yep. There it is. Okay, that's pretty loud. And that way, so that's that display. Input indicator right there. And then over here, we've got indicators for the headphone output. You see it's not lit up, but there's a little speaker indicator there. There it is. That's preamp. output activated, and then in the middle you can do both headphone and preamp, and I just bumped it for mute right there. I'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, but anyway, you switch between which output stage you want to use there. Okay, 6.35 millimeter single-ended or unbalanced output right there. I don't recommend using it. The power spec here is way, way, way below the balanced outputs, so it is clearly better suited to be a balanced amplifier. And then you have two flavors of balanced output in 4.4 millimeter Pentacon and then 4-pin XLR, which is mounted upside down. Then you have enter menu button here. Okay, so you can navigate the menu by pushing that, rotating the volume knob here, and then like selecting enter. Okay, for that menu, you push down for enter and mute, and you go back. Okay, you can also, of course, navigate the menu from the remote control. So you get display settings. So you can select the brightness, how long the display is active after you make a change. Okay, all of that. You've got volume limit right there on power up. So like when you turn it on, you can set a starting volume level if you want to. Okay, shape. Okay, there's that thing for the remote control that I told you about, that you can change it from triangle to square and all of that. Okay, information, reset everything. Okay, so, you know, menu controls, all of that there. Also, I said this already, but look how great it looks. Okay, it's just a really nice looking piece with the black and then just these like brass colored accents on there. Really sharp looking. Very like tight tolerances on the machining and all of that. Looks really good. Okay, I'm going to lift the camera up and show you the top plate of this thing and make a couple of points there. So let's do that, and then we'll look at the back panel. Lifting the camera up a little bit, I want to point out a couple of interesting things. One is one of my minor quibbles, and as I've been saying here, like really the only complaints that I have about this unit are relatively minor quibbles. And one of them is the operation of the volume control, which is a 60-step, some sort of digital attenuator. You can read on the website what it actually is there. Okay, but it's right here. And here's the thing, when you look at it from overhead, so imagine your eyeball is up here looking straight down at the volume knob here, then everything is hunky-dory, right? You turn it clockwise to get louder, you turn it counterclockwise to get quieter. Here's the issue with that. If you are looking at it straight on, like we just were a moment ago, then that means that the part of this volume knob that you see moves left to right for quieter and right to left for louder. Okay, so again, if you're looking at it from up above, the motion of this makes complete sense for louder and quieter, but if you're just looking at it dead straight on here, then that was one thing that I had to train myself to get used to, was that this way is louder and this way is quieter. So that's just one thing you just kind of have to train your brain to realize with this unit, or just use the volume control on the remote control. Okay, so that's one thing that I want to point out in this view of the top panel here, which, I mean, by the way, looks great with this venting here and then just the engraved LAiV logo here. Look at this. We also have 3 colored divots here in a triangular configuration here on the top of the unit. Those divots have the purpose of holding another piece of LAiV gear. Here's the Harmony DAC, review pending, okay? But that can sit right on top of the amp there, or vice versa, because the Harmony DAC also has those same divots here to hold the spikes on the bottom of the unit here, okay? Like so, okay, to sit on there and keep it lifted up there. And again, you can stack these in any way that you want, because both of them, set that off to the side there, both of them have that same configuration of the triangular feet and then these divots. Now, Do those spikes scratch up a desk or tabletop like this soft wood little, TV tray table that I have here? The answer is yes. So LAiV very thoughtfully included these little feet, okay, with the unit there, that they are rubber on the bottom, like they're sticky, okay, on there. And I'll just go ahead and show you. Rubber on the bottom, okay, so they are sticky, they are soft, okay, and then they hold the unit in place like this. Now the challenge is every time you lift one of these up, you have to realign it with the feet, and I didn't do it correctly, so I'm going to have to come back and fix it here, okay. But they do have those feet so that once it's in position, you're good to go there, at least on the tabletop level. Now, let me pause the camera here and get that figured out, get that realigned again. All right, that brings me to my next minor quibble. I mean, other than having to take the time to line up those feet there when you're at the table level of the unit, the triangular configuration of feet on this unit, and other companies do this too. Denafrips and Musician products do this. The Aquila Voce S3 that I reviewed did this, where it only has the 3 feet. Means that stacking other things on it can be something that you have to be careful with, right? You just have to be careful how you load it, right, in there, because it will pop wheelies on you if you put too much pressure on these back corners. So stacking things with the triangular feet is just something you have to be careful about. So it stacks really well with other LAiV products, as I just showed you, really well. But with other pieces of gear, less well. Okay, so that's something that you've got to keep in mind with this unit as well. All right, let's go ahead and turn it around to the back panel. All right, amplifier derriere. So IEC power input. Okay, let's see, I think fuse or something behind there if you need it. Okay, grounding terminals if you need them. Here is the single-ended preamplifier output. Wait, oh, is that correct? Let's see. Yes, single-ended preamplifier output there. Okay, you have 12-volt trigger in out. Okay, here there is the balanced XLR preamplifier outputs. Here is your balanced XLR analog input here. Okay, upside down again. You see all of these are upside down. Like the way they mounted the circuit board, they flipped everything upside down, probably for heat sinking purposes. The Hi-Fi Golden Wave Prelude was like that in there. And then we have this thing called LAiV over here. And this is a connector that goes to a couple of other products that LAiV sells. One of them is like LaPhono, and the other is LAiX, okay, for external, something like that. So anyway, they have a phono preamplifier that connects to right there, okay? And then they also have like another breakout box here that has another balanced input on it, and also an RCA single-ended input, okay, like these, only inputs if you want it, and then that also connects right there, okay, as options for system expansion if you need them. Okay, and so yeah, back panel there it is. I should say, let me verify this, I wrote it down. Yeah, the balanced input here can accept a 16-volt RMS signal, which is huge. So you can actually use a preamplifier before this thing even then, or a DAC with a really, really high output level on it, and it will be comfortable using it. Okay, because that's pretty crazy right there. So that may or may not be worth it to you to know that, but it's there. All right, there's the back panel. It's heavy, right? It's not the heaviest amplifier I've ever used, but I'm not going to hold it up during the course of there's that feet thing again. I'm not going to hold it up, but it's like all one chunk of aluminum almost in its chassis here, and then the faceplate stuck in there and all of that. So well-built unit there if you want. Okay, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. I will come back and hit it real quick here. I mentioned the potential of burn-in on the display here. It can happen. LAiV products are apparently basically all modular, so if you want to replace the display unit, if yours gets burned in and that bothers you, I think if I read on Headfi correctly, around 150 bucks or so, you can be sent a replacement screen, and it's all modular. Open it up, pop the old one out, put the new one in, and you should be off and running. Okay, that's it for the unit tour. Back to me on camera talking about other things. All right, last thing that I'll say about like the use of this amp here is that it gets warm but never really hot. The Class AB design means that it doesn't crank out quite as much heat as a standard Class A amp would do. So it does warm up to the touch a little bit, but I mean the whole chassis kind of serves as a heat sink, and then there's also some ventilation going on here as well with this silvery colored panel that I showed you earlier, or copper, brass, whatever that color is. Okay, accent there, gold. Okay, I know sound words better than color words, sorry. Okay, all right, but it just generally gets a little bit warm. So you do want to give it some room to breathe, but I don't think overheating with this unit is really going to be an issue unless you are driving it with a really difficult load on max volume for hours and hours and hours on end. Okay, so that's the only thing that I'll say there. All right, let's start turning our attention towards how it sounds, and of course we'll talk test gear to be able to answer that question. So I am an all digital music listener, so music files that ultimately would have been put through here for listening would have included lossless or high-res FLAC files or DSD files, either played locally or, in the case of FLAC files, streamed from Qobuz all through Roon. Roon endpoints that would have served in chains feeding this unit would have included Sonor Ultra Rendu streamers, some of them either connected direct USB or also routed through a Singur SU6 DDC. I also used a Mac Mini running HQ Player that was connected via USB into various DACs and then into this unit. Some of those DACs include the matching Harmony DAC from LAiV, which again, review coming up for that in the very near future. I also tried my Lampizator Baltic 3 DAC and my Berkeley Alpha Series 2 DAC as sources for this one as well. Headphones that this thing would have driven are manifold, so give me a moment to get through all of these. Beyerdynamic DT880 600 ohm would have been here. Mastrop plus Sennheiser HD6XX. Focal Utopia Original. Dan Clark E3, Dan Clark Noir X. Okay, those were in recently. I also had the Foztex TH1100RP in for review while I had this, so that pairing got some time together in there as well. HiFiMan HE1000SE, HiFiMan Susvara, the original Susvara anyway. And then also I recently got in the ZMF Calderas, both open and closed. The open got a little bit of time on here. I just haven't gotten to the closed yet, because again, we are like just a day or so out from when I received those at the time of this recording. All right, but that's a fair range of headphones I would say that I tried on here. So what did I learn through all of that? And I learned that this is really an excellent headphone amplifier, okay? To kind of give you a little bit of spoilers for the comparisons that are coming up, I found that on a technical level, it very much trades blows with the HiFiMan Golden Wave Prelude and the Vioelectric HP2A V281, two amps that I really love, that I have kept around because I like them so much, and they are useful reviewing tools, and they are great for personal music listening enjoyment. Okay, this one is right there with those on an overall technical level, so it absolutely earns its $2,700 price tag and is at home in that group of really high quality hi-fi headphone amplifiers. It does sound a little bit different than those other amps that are out there, so let's talk about the nature of its sound here. Kind of the 1,000-foot view of the perceived frequency response of this unit is that it is what I think most people would consider neutral. Right, it kind of has that chi-fi-like sound to it. Like if you've listened to a lot of like SMSLs and that sort of thing out there, well, this has a similar sound, although much higher end, right? Like much higher quality than a lot of those. But the perceived frequency response that you get is very similar to something like that, which just, I think most people, again, will peg it as basically dead neutral. Okay, so there's that part, 1,000-foot view of the frequency response. When we get to presentational things, we get some interesting stuff. It is very smooth and refined, right? It's not overly dynamic or impactful. It doesn't have a particularly active or lively sound. It also is far from dull, like it doesn't sound over smoothed or lifeless or, again, dull or anything like that. It strikes a nice balance there, but it's not going to be, it's not particularly slammy, it's not particularly snappy or anything like that. It's a more laid back, kind of smooth and relaxed kind of sonic profile to it. Okay, that said, the resolution is excellent. The texturing is excellent. Okay, it's like, and then like, you know, back to the frequency response, like the tonal balance of it is also very good. You've got a very natural and organic sounding relationship between fundamental frequencies and their harmonics. And then attack and decay timing is also pretty natural and organic and all of that too. So you just kind of get this like smooth, velvety, organic kind of sound to it that has very few, if any, sharp or harsh edges to it. It's rather forgiving, so it has a lot of great resolution and detail retrieval to it, but it's graceful. Like it has it handles like poor recordings with some grace, right? Like it doesn't take bad stuff and just aggressively fire it down your ear canal so much. It just has a more laid back profile while still being technically excellent in there. The size of the soundstage does not stand out as being super big or small. It is nicely three-dimensional and holographic. There's a good sense of all three dimensions, the width, the height, the depth. Okay, there's good imaging and separation and layering to it, and so forth. Okay, again, middling dynamics, like you do get some hit with like kick drums and bass guitar string plucks and that sort of thing, but it's not really a selling point of the sound, but it's also not a weakness. Again, it's just going for smooth, relaxed, refined, long-term comfort listening kind of sound to it here on that. And just, but again, very little in the way of harsh edges, if ever, really nice and smooth without sacrificing detail, resolution, or texturing, or anything of that nature. Okay, so that's its own sound there in a nutshell. Very technically excellent, but non-fatiguing, relaxed, refined, laid back, but never laid back to the point where it sounds dull or stuck in the mud or like things are missing. Okay. So, excellent balance there. Let's dive into a little bit more of those amplifier comparisons that I was talking about there a moment ago with the HP2A V281 and the Golden Wave Prelude, and then I will also mention a little bit about Theramore and Hypsos in there. Both the Prelude and the V281 are a little bit warmer in their overall perceived frequency response in this one. Again, this one is like kind of just comes across to me as like dead neutral. The Prelude leans into warmth, and then the VAIO is warm, right? Like it just, that's to my ears the way that I hear it there. The VAIO has like a thicker, fuller sound to it, and definitely a more present low end than this one does. The Prelude also has a little bit thicker, fuller, and more present low end than this one does as well. Both of those amps are a little bit more dynamic and active and lively in their sound, particularly in the low end, especially the V281 in that regard. Okay, the V281 I think stages a little bit wider, just sounds like a bigger overall sonic presentation to it. The Prelude is more like, this one is more in line with the sound stage size of the Prelude, all of that in there. They are very similar there. Okay, and so forth. Now, what this one has over the Prelude and the V281, because I said they trade blows on a technical level here, what this one has over those two is that it sounds more refined, a little bit smoother. Okay, it's got a little bit better, more accurate tonal balance to it than those other two amps. And those other two amps are very good in that regard. But like cymbal crashes on this one just sound a little bit smoother, a little bit more even, and a little bit more natural. Vocal timbre, I think this one actually is a little bit stronger than both the Prelude and the V281 on there, which that surprised me. The vocals sound a little bit smoother, a little bit richer, a little bit more organic to their timbre in there. And I think that comes back to the tonal balance really a little bit, the relationship between fundamental frequencies and harmonics, because there's just in comparison, okay, in comparison, not absolute and in a universal sense, but in comparison to this amp, the Prelude and the V281 have just a little bit of tonal roughness to them, okay, just a slight edge, okay, in the mid-range, in the treble, that, again, this one just has the smoothness and the refinements to pull out there that those don't. However, if you like an energetic, fun, and dynamic, hard-hitting sound, V281 has it the most. Prelude comes in next, unless you plug in a hi-fi min Susvara, then Prelude has it the most, then the V281, then this one, okay? So that's something to keep in mind there. So that, again, the trading of blows there. I like all three amps a lot. I can listen to all three of them happily. They just all have slightly different sounds, and hopefully I've kind of elucidated what some of the differences are between the Prelude, the V281, and this one. What about the Orin Hypsos? And it should be mentioned here that I did not have the Orin Hypsos in for direct comparison listening tests here with the HP2A. I think from a tuning standpoint, like a perceived frequency response standpoint, this one's going to be more like the OR than the V281 or the Prelude, right? It's just going to be a little bit more neutral. I think the soundstage on the HP2A here is going to be slightly bigger than the Orin Hypsos, but not hugely so, just slightly bigger. But I think overall, just like the sonic character of this one and the OR sounded more similar to me, at least my memory of the OR anyway. Okay, again, several months in between there. But my memory of the OR, like in comparison to the V281 and the Prelude, which I was able to, like, you know, transitive property compare this one to, is I suspect this one, like, if you're a fan of the OR's sound, this is going to be more up your alley there in that way. All right, so there are some comparisons in there. And again, bravo to LAiV here, because to get in with that group of V281, Prelude, and OR, that's great company to be in. And at $2,700 US, that's right where you need to be. Like, those amps are the standard, in my opinion, in that price range. And this is right in there mixing it up with those amps, being right on their technical level, being a little bit stronger in some areas, not as quite as strong in other areas, but in terms of the total package that it brings, being right there with those amps with its own take on what things should sound like. And so that's great, right? That's what it needs to be. Bravo, okay? Let's talk about some headphone pairings here as well while we're at it. Every headphone that I mentioned there in my test gear list there that I plugged into this, I thought sounded at least very good, okay? The only thing that I would say didn't necessarily synergize as well as it does with some of the other amps up there would be the Hi-Fi Min Susvara. The power, at least the original, the power spec here, I don't think it's actually a power issue, because all of the control, the resolution, the detail retrieval, the holography, the texturing, and all of that are in the sound when you plug the Susvara into this amplifier here. And it doesn't sound like it's straining. I think it just comes down to, like, the dynamics of this one, the impact, the slam, the snappiness, and all of that. Susvara needs a little bit of excitement from the amplifier that you plug it into, at least in my opinion. Something to wake it up and give it a little bit more dynamic and impactful kind of sound to it, because the Susvara actually does slam quite hard when you give it an amp that allows it to do that. And that was kind of the part that was just a little bit lacking here. Some people are going to like the way the Susvara sounds on this just fine, and that's okay. It's just not my favorite pairing with that. But everything else that I tried, HE1000 SE, original Utopia, E3, everything else, right, sounded really great on this, okay? Unless I just didn't like the headphone, like in the case of the Fostex TH1100RP, right? Sounded really good on there. So if you have an OG Susvara and you like this kind of a sound, I would look at the Ferrum Orin Hypsos. But I am guessing that I would prefer the sound of this unit with HE1000 SE E3. But all of those other headphones that I mentioned, I'm guessing I would prefer this one over the Or, and I say that because I remember enjoying them more, like just being more engaged in the music when I plugged non-Susvara headphones into this unit than I did into the Or. Okay, so that's another like piece of comparison there, and just also something to keep in mind. Okay, so then pulling all of this together, some of this is going to be a bit of a repeat here, but let's just wrap this up and put a bow on it. I called this a rock solid piece of hi-fi gear because it sounds great. It's fairly easy to use. It looks great. It has a couple of like build and ergonomic usage quirks that are just like weird, but not necessarily a problem. And so I just call them minor quibbles, as I say there. And I don't think they'll be deal breakers for very many people. And like it compares favorably to a lot of similarly priced amplifiers out there, including heavy hitters like the Vioelectric HP2A V281, the HiFiMan Goldenwave Prelude, and the Ferrum Ore and Hypso stack. It just gets right in there with those three on a technical level, mixes it up with them, gives you a complete sonic package that's right there with those units with its own take on sound, and that's great. Okay, that's great. So I like this unit a lot. I recommend it, obviously. So if you're in the market for a headphone amp around this price, then yeah, give this one an audition, at least give it a try and look into it. So I'm LAiV Theory. This has been my review of the LAiV Harmony HP2A headphone amplifier and preamplifier. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment. Check out my PayPal, my Patreon. Generally do those things you do to support YouTube channels. And as always, enjoy the music.